Hello everyone and welcome to Itoday Apero number 10, already 10. Thank you so much for being with us today live. I'm gonna just switch to the view so you can see everyone. Hey guys, say hi to the camera. Woohoo! This is great. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here live. I wanted to say it's always a great pleasure to have so many great innovators with us during this Itoday Apero. We do it live because it's also a way for all of you guys to basically interact, with the speaker. And yeah, there are more and more people participating, and it's great. And I hope it's gonna continue this way. So. We are live from Lausanne, Switzerland, and Itoday Apero is all about innovation. And today we're going to talk about workshop facilitation, all types of workshop, whether they are in person, they are online, they are hybrid. And we have a great guest today, and her name.
Are you sure?
The best about this topic. So her name is Jackie Colburn. She's a great friend from Minneapolis, Minnesota, right? USA.
Correct. Yeah, that's where I am.
Amazing. So I'm gonna read, and you can add a lot of information about yourself. But I'm gonna read. So Jackie is a workshop facilitator. She has been leading the creation of new products, services, and businesses for over 15 years already. You don't look that old, by the way. Everything from emerging startups to critical strategic efforts for Fortune 50 companies. With a dedication to clarity, Jackie thrives when the program is hard. I love that, and the team is ready to make a change but doesn't quite know what to do or how. She's worked with, wait for it, teams at companies such as Medtronic, Roche, Ameriprise Financial, or the Purdue University. Please, everyone, make some noise for Jackie Colburn. Woo! More noise. That's great. Thank you so much, Jackie, to join. This is great.
Happy to be here, Steph. Always a pleasure to see you.
So today we're going to talk about workshop facilitation. And maybe just to start, can you introduce yourself in a few words, and also how did you end up running workshops? How did it happen, all of this?
Well, I have to say, I think it's been in me from a very young age. I always had a desire to wrangle the people around me and help them to move forward when they felt like they were stuck. That includes my family, from when I was a little kid to my friend groups growing up. But the way I ended up in this role professionally is I found myself working at a couple of digital product innovation studios. I was responsible for leading teams to design and build new products. And I did a lot of meeting facilitation and workshop facilitation while I was doing those jobs. And I found that I was not only very good at it, but I loved doing it. So it was something that really energized me. I felt so present while I was guiding teams through collaboration, and I decided that I wanted to pursue it more exclusively. Mm-hmm. And that's why I launched my facilitation practice almost 6 years ago now.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. Why do you think that workshop is so important to do right now? You could do a lot of things, right? With your experience, why did you decide to go this way?
Well, you know what? We are more distracted than ever, and people are pulled in a million different directions. We're always connected. And I think that oftentimes we're not doing great work, and we're not having a pleasurable experience when we're working as a result. We're burned out. We're not able to focus. And so when people come together to focus and collaborate in a workshop style session, they're not only able to create better products, services, businesses, whatever it is they're there to make together, but they also have a better experience as people doing that work because they're able to truly focus and commit to working on something over an extended period of time, which is so rare these days.
Yeah, that's true. We met, I guess it was at the very, very beginning of COVID, right? So I've heard your name before, like from John Zeratsky. He mentioned you, and I know you guys were doing things together. And at the very beginning of COVID, it was the first wave. Then you reached out to me and you said, "I'm writing this thing, the Remote Design Sprint Guide." And I guess your name is famous from like by a lot of people who are here today. They've heard your name because of that Remote Sprint Guide. So could you tell us like what it is and how did you do it?
Yeah, well, that project came to be because, as you mentioned, I had been collaborating with John Zeratsky. We had run a couple of design sprint training workshops together, and we had planned to do a tour. It was going to be, a mix of John and Jake, as well as me, going to different locations to do these design sprint boot camps. But then the pandemic hit. And so obviously that plan did not come to be. Yeah. And we got together to talk about, well, what could we do instead? And that's where the idea came from, to create a remote sprint guide for everybody that was running sprints or working collaboratively and was suddenly forced into a remote setting. So I worked with them to put together something that people could use to really transition to a remote format quickly. It was meant to be, it still is, a guide that follows the design sprint format, but really takes you through step by step what to do at each part of the process. And then Steph, you collaborated with us on putting together the remote sprint template for Miro and Mural at the time so that people could take that and use that to run their sprints with.
Yeah. It was all so fast. Like I don't exactly remember the exact time frame, but it was in the first weeks of COVID, and it's crazy because what you guys did was, and I think it was really your role to go to facilitators to see what they were doing and to assemble all of this in that guide. The guide is great, by the way. You can check it on Google. Go Remote Design Sprint Guide. You will find it, and I mean so much of knowledge and so fast. So yeah, like how many facilitators did you interview for?
Well, thank you. I think I talked to about 20 people, and the idea was, well, people have already done this. So people have run remote design sprints, they've run remote workshops. So let's really talk to those facilitators and use their experience as input to putting together this best practice guide. And yes, that was my role, to go out and talk to everybody and curate the recommendations for the remote sprint guide. And it was a lot of fun because I got to meet people like you. I also have to admit, it was right at the start of the pandemic. And my daughter, who was 2 at the time, she was home suddenly. So I couldn't really facilitate workshops myself. But I had this other project that I was working on during odd hours of the day, as you know, for those of you with young children. And I did feel like a lot of us at the start of the pandemic, it was nice to have a project and something to work on that felt like a contribution or a way to do something when everything else felt so out of control and scary.
So let's talk about these first online workshops that you have run, and you've run a lot of workshops like since that time. I guess they were mostly online, but maybe you're gonna tell us the type of workshops you are running right now. But what are the obvious advantages of these online workshops versus in person?
Yeah, so a lot of surprising advantages to the remote workshop or online workshop format I have discovered. One is pretty obvious, that you can bring teams together that are distributed around the world to collaborate without requiring plane travel for anyone. So I like that. I feel like it reduces the stress on people's bodies. Also on the environment, we don't have as much air travel and hotel usage to bring people together. The other is some of the tools that are available in remote whiteboarding collaboration tools. I use Miro and Mural pretty much exclusively, so I'll talk about those as I'm referring to the advantages. But the voting tool that is available in both of those is great because it keeps voting totally anonymous. I also love that you can have your whole workshop or design sprint planned out and ready to go. But then you can use the mural to draw focus to the activity that you want to do one at a time. And then you have that as a record of your workshop.
I totally relate to that. Before running online workshops, people were always asking me, could you like print the workshop? And I was like, wait, what does it mean? They were like, yeah, in the room, could you have a giant poster with the workshop with all the activities? And I was like, oh, wow, that sounds very expensive and very hard to do, right? To have the whole, and now, we just do it with an online board. And as you said, I think it's great because it's a way to capture, everything that was created during the workshop on an online format, but you keep it afterwards. It's the memory of the sprint, basically.
Right. Yeah. And maybe this would be a spot to open it up. I'd be curious for other facilitators in the room if there's anything that you found that's super advantageous to the remote format.
Does anyone want to talk about what do you like about remote sprints?
Or remote workshops.
I can totally relate, and of course I say sprints, but it can totally be workshop. I can totally relate about the whole traveling thing. It takes so much, because now we are not running only remote workshops anymore. Like we have to go on site, and I just forgot how hard it is. Like you have to travel, you go somewhere you don't know, you are not at ease because you don't know the place. It's a lot of stress. You can miss your plane, you can miss your taxi, your cab. It's a lot, and it's a lot on the facilitator, but it's also a lot on the participants. And I just forgot about that during that COVID time. But there are a lot of good sides of in-person, of course. We're going to talk about that. Yeah,
absolutely. Pros to both approaches.
Yeah. Well, another advantage really of remote, I find personally, and it's that you can get really the right persons in the room. So you can invite anyone who could be the best experts in the field or in the topic, and you just send a Zoom invite, and that person is going to be here with you and answer your questions or share knowledge. And it's harder with in-person because you can always have that person coming online, but it's different, and it's harder to have the specialist, coming to your location. So that's a good point for online workshops.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I'll say is that I think I will always do my testing and customer interviews remote. Mm-hmm. And I've continued where I will do an in-person sprint and then do all of the customer interviews remote. And I love doing it that way because it's so much easier to get someone to hop onto a Zoom. It's also easier to just manage technically. I have people use Calendly to schedule. It sends them a Zoom invite. I get them into the Zoom. I can record the session so that my team can watch the interviews. It's very seamless, and I don't think I'll do it another way.
Yeah, were you already doing that before going online during COVID, or is it something that you've discovered during that time and that you kept doing?
It's something I discovered during COVID and have kept doing.
Me too, actually. During all these years of in-person workshops, I was running my user interviews and basically, coming with several cameras, a whole crazy setup, and just to get something that is, the day I discovered Zoom, that you can record, actually use the screen and make several videos, it just changed my life. It's crazy. So definitely something to keep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What are the cons of online workshops, according to you? Now that you have practiced a lot and also in person, when do you think you should go in person, and what are the issues with online?
Well, I'll tell you about the cons first. The cons are you're looking at a screen all day. So just the drain on your eyes and your attention, staring at a screen, I think, is hard to do for people. And it's also hard to maintain the focus of your participants because I cannot see what Kurt is doing right now in addition to being in this workshop. So I have to ask people to be present, to stay in the room, to close distractions, but there's no way for me to know if they're doing that. So that's a definite drawback.
I agree. The worst thing also is, especially when you facilitate or you share your screen or you share your slides, you don't see the people. like, because all these softwares, they're really badly designed, and when you share, you don't see anyone, and it makes it very hard just to read the room, right? Especially when people turn off camera and all of this. So.
I don't let people turn off camera. That's something I have as a rule in the workshops that I run. And, I will say I have a lot of rules, but they're there for a reason, for both my in-person and online workshops. But with regards to being in a remote workshop, I say, your camera needs to be on. If you turn your camera off, I'm going to assume that you've stepped away. Oh, Kurt, you're distracted by Darja's dog.
yeah, it's in the chat. So wait, I'm gonna try to zoom in on the dog like she's.
Dog.
Daria, do you have something to say about your dog?
About the dogs?
Yeah, about the dog.
We have 3 dogs today in the office. So I'm hysterical. I'm telling you, it's hard. I love that, and I love it. We have, it's also the result of COVID. Because people got dogs during the COVID period. So now we are kind of blessed with having dogs in the office, and I'm super happy about that. And of course, they are participating also in workshops, and it's a super cool distraction sometimes. Because people are there, oh my God, you have dogs in the office. Like, yeah.
In person is dogs.
That's cool. By the way, Jackie, your camera is super blurry, so if you can try to adjust it with your hand, that would be amazing. Yeah.
Oh, what happened?
Yeah, it's gonna come. Yeah, this is like typical like online workshop issue, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and a new camera.
Yeah, exactly.
What I was gonna say is for rules. So if I'm doing a workshop, I will require everyone have their camera on. If your camera is off, I assume you've left the room. You're attending to other business, which is okay. I say. Things may come up that are urgent. If yes, turn your camera off, go attend to them, come back when you can be fully present. Yeah. The other thing I'll do, and I think you do this stuff, is I have people unmute for the workshop. So in workshop, virtual, I want to catch those sort of audible cues that we get when we're in a room together. So as an example, I want to hear Mary Ellen laughing when I tell a joke, or I want to hear Sabrina kind of like sigh if she doesn't like Steph's idea. I think that's something that, with the muted meeting culture, we lose. And it's so important when you're managing a group to have that as a part of the experience.
I totally agree. Like I have so many participants who feel sorry because they are noisy, at their home, and sorry, there is my baby crying. But it's what I want. I need this life in the room, because you can't stay for days together if there is no noise. It's it makes everyone like isolated, and it's very hard to speak for like 1 hour with no noise. Or also there is that lag when people want to speak, and they have a couple of seconds with no noise, and it makes it just hard to facilitate because you lose like the whole flow of what you are doing. So yeah, totally relate. So how do you enforce these rules? Like it sounds a bit strong, like forcing people to turn on the camera and all these rules. Like do you say it up front at the beginning of the workshop, or does it come quite naturally?
Yeah, I say it up front. So I have ground rules that I introduce at the beginning of any workshop. And I ask people to agree that they will go along with them. So there's sort of a request. I'm requesting that you follow my rules. And here's why I have these rules. There are exceptions that I'll say if you have a lot of noise or you need to go away and attend to something, those are times when you could turn off audio, turn off video. But then throughout the workshop, I will call out people. If we were in a workshop now, I would say, Dave, are you actually here? Are you participating, or away? And if Dave came on audio and said, I'm here, I'd say, okay, can you turn your camera on so you can be present with the group? Yeah. So I enforce my rules.
You have to do that a bit like a teacher,
Yeah, and that is one of the things that I feel like I embody an elementary school persona at times with the way that I guide workshops. And I think it helps because I remember that I need to enforce rules, really take care of the group, that I need to speak slowly, repeat myself often, check for confirmation of understanding. All of that's important. And I think it goes a long way in helping the group to move along together in making hard decisions and exploring ideas together.
That's cool. I don't know how it is in the US, and I would like to have your perspective on this, but at least in Europe, in Central Europe, where we are based, seems that we are going back to in-person. Like all my last workshops, they were back in person. So I lost a bit of my control because it's great to, to be able to work. We don't have to travel super far, but at the same time, there are a lot of advantages at going in person. It's, more involving, I guess, and it's probably funnier. So is it the same in the US? Can you feel that? Or because the country is so big that did you keep remote?
It depends. I've had a mix. I have done, I did a workshop 2 weeks ago, a design sprint that was in person, and everyone flew to my location, which was nice. But they were from all over the country. I'm central. Nice. So they wanted to be together. They flew here. I have a strategic planning workshop next week that is in person with the team, but the team is local to Minneapolis. But then I also have done I have a virtual design sprint coming up later this month. And it's a similar situation. The team's distributed, but in the US continental. And it's just easier logistically for them to do it remote. And that's fine. So it's a mix, honestly, and it just seems to depend on the team, what they want to do, how distributed they are, how they're used to working. But I do think that when I'm trying to discern whether or not it should be in person or remote, the reason to be in person is if a team really needs to come together and build team culture and team camaraderie. I think that it is something that is so much better in person when you're sharing energy and sharing a space. So as an example, I had a team that was forming. So I was working with a team that was bringing together two parts of a huge company to make a new team, and they needed someone to facilitate a workshop to help them align around their purpose as well as the work that they were going to be doing over the coming year. And for that, it was important that they come together in a space because it was really one of the objectives was to form a team. So with that being the intent, then it made sense for people to travel internationally to be together in a space.
Yeah. It's what I figured out too. I guess these workshops, they are seen as, something important. It's an event in someone's career or someone's life. And I've seen the same, even working with totally distributed teams, like they are used to work every day online. And for this workshop or this sprint, they were like, okay, let's meet in person together. We even went to remote, super cool location, up the mountains, because it was something out of the routine of their day-to-day life. And I think it's great to see it that way, that the workshop can really be an experience and not just work. So yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, I agree.
If you can choose, are you doing it in person anytime, or do you prefer to do it online now that you have run so many workshops? What's your personal preference, if you can choose?
It's a good question. I don't want to say I don't have a preference, but it's a little bit true. I want to do what's right for the problem and for the team.
So basically, you would offer them to let's do it in person or let's do it online, or do you just await what they would like to do and you just adapt, you just respond to the demand?
Well, it's more of a conversation. So sometimes they come to me with a point of view. We want to do this in person, or we want to do it on remote. And then I'll talk to them about why. Why do you want to work that way? To suss out whether that makes sense. If they come to me with no perspective, then I'll ask them about, where is the team located? How are they used to working? What is the purpose of the workshop? What are we hoping to get out of it? Or the purpose of the design sprint? And then from there, I'll recommend what we should do.
Yeah. Can I ask one question?
Of course.
Do you feel that the energy of the group is better in person than when you have the online workshops?
I think it, again, like it depends. So if I have a bunch of people who are extroverts and really like to be with other people, then they're better when they're together. But if I have a group that's more introverted, so and not to generalize, but say I'm working on a product, a digital product, and I've got designers and engineers and a product owner, and we're working on a design sprint to put together a new feature or a new part of that product. Those people I find seem to do better online. Like the in-person collaboration, I think wears out introverts more, and they can go more in as a result.
Okay.
But if I've got a bunch of executives who are trying to do some strategic planning and they really want to, like, you know, be together, then in person is better for those people.
Makes sense. Yeah. I've seen the same actually. That, you know, there are some people, they basically live online, so that's their natural state now. And yeah, like engineers or people who are always online, and that's true. Bringing them in a location that they don't know, standing up in front of maybe the CEO, and have, you know, it's stressful for them sometimes. This is a really good question, Jackie. Do you see like online workshops as kind of like a degraded experience versus the in-person, or does it have its own value? And like, I'm always wondering myself as a facilitator, should we charge the same for in-person versus online? What do you think of this?
Well, I think your first question about degraded, I think it's just different. And like I said, I think there are scenarios where it makes sense to do remote, it makes sense to do in person. And so as a facilitator, I think it's our job to suss out what the right format is and to then design the workshop to accommodate that format to get the team where they need to be. With regards to charging, I charge the same price, but I charge for travel. So if I need to travel to you, then I charge more. I charge a flat fee per day for travel to be away from home, which covers my expenses as well as it's expenses plus a little bit more because of the stress of the travel and the time I'm away from my family. So I
Sorry, and when you are talking to your potential client, do you suggest like maybe it would be better if we do it online or in person, like, or would you do that recommendation, or just go with whatever with whatever your client needs? Sorry.
Like I said, it's more of a conversation. So if they come to me with a strong point of view, like we want to be in person, I will talk to them about why and make sure that feels like it's the right choice for their team. If they have no perspective, they're like in person, remote, we don't know, then I will talk to them more about what they want to get out of the workshop, who is going to be attending, and how they're used to working. And then that will inform my recommendation, where I'll say, you know, based on what I know, I think remote would be great. Or based on what I'm hearing, it seems like we should be in person.
Okay. Talking about pure result of the workshop, like, okay, for example, design sprint that we both know, there is a prototype, right, and user test at the end. Have you seen the difference of the quality of the outputs online versus in person?
No.
Me too. It's strange, right?
Yeah, quality of the output is really dependent on the team and what talent we have in the room.
Yeah.
Not whether we're in person or online. I will say, when I have an in-person design sprint and we're going to be in person the whole time, so all the way through prototype, I will talk to the designer or designers to say, hey, you may want to think about your setup. You may want to secure an additional monitor or a workspace that's going to be comfortable for you. Because one of the advantages to remote is everybody can be in their own workspace. And so ergonomically, it's easier on the body for the people who are in the maker position, the designers, the makers who are creating the prototype. When it gets to crunch time, I don't want them to be crunched because they only have a laptop and they're in a conference room and they're hunched over. That's great.
I just wanted to, because I'm seeing there is a board of chocolate in front of me, and that's just a reminder for me. Usually at Itoday Apero, we do have a little thing that is, we have a bottle of wine for the speaker, but also because we have symmetrical gifts, the speaker can choose at the end of the meetup who asked the best questions, and that person is gonna get the same gift, right? So Jackie, you don't drink, so that's why you're gonna have Sorry?
I do drink. Yeah. I drink
wine. You do. I thought that you don't drink, but okay. I thought you didn't drink, but anyway, we have a super nice fancy box of chocolate for you, and you're gonna get to choose at the end of the meetup the person who asked the best questions or had the best, was sharing the best stories. So right now, I guess we know who it is. It's gonna be Gabrielle, of course. There's no competition, but it can come, right? So at the end, you're gonna have to choose the person. Okay.
Oh, out loud? I'm going to have to say it out loud?
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Okay. All right.
So guys, don't hesitate to ask you questions, and please write them in the chat before asking. I would like to chat a bit about hybrid, because this is like rather new. So we have in person, everyone's in the same room, online, with the fancy whiteboarding tools. And what's hybrid, and why is it becoming trendy? And can you tell us a bit about this format?
Sure. Well, I'll give you my perspective on hybrid. If I do a hybrid workshop, it's designed in the same way I would design a remote workshop. And the people who are together in a room will use remote collaboration tools. So the reason I do this is because it creates democracy for collaboration, because everybody's collaborating in the same space. Just looking at the comments in the chat. Dogs really driving Kurt mad.
That's cool.
And I've done a few of these where team members want to be together and share space, but some team members cannot be in the shared space. So that means everybody who's in the conference room has a laptop that they're working in for collaboration. And then as the facilitator, I stay home because I need my big setup, my dual monitor and my ergonomic setup to facilitate the group. So that's how I run my hybrid sessions.
I remember I had a horrible hybrid design sprint in the way that the whole team was in person, right? During COVID, but we couldn't travel to the country where they were. So I was facilitating online from home, basically. So they put me on the giant screen in the room, and it was so weird because they were all in the same room with like one microphone, right, for the whole room. And I was like trying to, facilitate the sprint being so far away, and it was fun at the same time. But when you had to prototype, and I was like, please show me this, and they were coming to the camera to show me they were sketching on paper and showing me directly. That was something. We did it. It worked. We delivered result, but that was tough. Not easy.
I did one like that stuff where the whole team was together in a conference room in Florida. And I was here in Minnesota. And I had them all collaborate in Mural. And so they did sketch on paper, but then they take a picture and put it in Mural. But they had me up on the big screen. And the challenge for me in that scenario was I was missing some of the in-room dialogue because I was the only one who was not in the room. So when they would have some conversation, or at one point somebody wanted to put something on the board, I couldn't see it, and it was very challenging, but it did work. Yes, it sounds like we had similar experiences.
Yeah, of course. So Daria is trying to win the chocolate box. Daya, are you ready for your question?
Everything for the chocolate, always. My question would be, because this is something that we always hesitate about, the size of the group to have online. What's a good size? In my experience, I would say that up to 5, 6, it's kind of you can get people, active and there, and you can control them somehow. And then we were also sometimes bringing in the second facilitator, and that was often super useful when people had technical difficulties, so that I was able to facilitate the workshop and not losing time with one person who couldn't, open Miro or whatever, FigJam, something. So do you also do that, or do you have super capacities and you can facilitate 20 people at a time? Or if so, how do you do that?
So you're spot on with the number. 5 to 7 is the ideal team size for both in-person as well as remote collaboration. That's what I recommend to my clients. I will stretch up to 9 because I can feel like I can do it. But those are typically not for full design sprints. That's more of like a strategic planning or road mapping workshop, where I'll allow for a few more people to join. But I love the idea of having a secondary facilitator. I've heard other people say that is incredibly helpful. I don't do that. I facilitate and guide discussion on my own. But I think if you can bring someone else, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's quite a luxury. It's not always, it's always about budget, right? To bring an extra person. Right. But if you can, it's really great because that person's going to troubleshoot all the technical issues and all of this. And just give the best experience, of course. So Daria, thank you so much for your question. We have a question from Sabrina.
Hi, Sabrina.
Yeah. Hi, Jackie. Nice to see you. I would like to know how the appetite for design sprints and request for design sprints changed over the last 2 years, since everyone is now online and collaborating more, let's say my observation, but also requesting different kinds of workshops. How is your perception in the US?
I mean, it's hard for me to speak to that broadly because I really only have my perception. And I think, one of the things that happened with COVID was when I went to online facilitation only, is it really opened up the possibility for me to work with anyone, anywhere. So my potential client base became global as opposed to being limited by my region or by travel. So it seems like, oh my gosh, there's so much more demand and appetite for this, but it could also just be that because of the shift to remote, I'm able to work with so many more people. But I'd be curious to hear from others that are in the US what your perspective is. I know Leilani and Kurt, Mary, you're all here. If you have any perspective.
I personally haven't been facilitating any design sprints, but doing more strategic planning type of workshops overall. And I've found that there is a stronger appetite, especially in the last 6 months, of companies wanting to come together and get a little bit of that face time, if possible. There was even one client that had some counterparts in India, and they did fly them in. I mean, they were going through larger team changes as well. And so that FaceTime, to get that focused FaceTime, was really, really valuable. But I am seeing that there's definitely more openness to the workshops and the face-to-face type of structure. And for some teams, especially if they're new, we're feeling a little bit more disconnected depending on what's happening in their culture. That can just be a really valuable time, not only to make progress around what problems we're trying to solve or what, planning is needed and discussions are needed, but also for some of that team building too.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Leilani.
There's a question from Gabriel. He's back.
Yeah, I'm trying to take my spot back. No, Jackie, I was interested in knowing if you ever run a really small group, like for a workshop. Like I'm in the position where I'm have a couple of friends that I'm trying to run a workshop with, but it's a startup. There are only 3 partners. There's no more people, and I even have a friend he's only like it's the CEO and multitasking everywhere. So how do you do that? Can you do it?
Yeah, I have done it. And there's one client in particular who I have in mind who is a CEO, and he was recruiting another woman to be co-founder. So she came, it was a design sprint. I'll tell you the whole story. He was working on a new business idea and was trying to recruit this woman to partner with him at the same time. So she came in for the first 2 days of the sprint. I facilitated a full sprint. I also brought a designer, a creative partner with me, who's not only great at design and prototyping, but he's great at copy, he's great at strategy. So I brought him alongside me as a contributor and participant. Okay. And then I did something which I almost never do. I added some ideas in during the sketching stage, just to give a bit more diversity of that thinking to the mix for them to consider.
Okay, because I tried that and I didn't know if I was because you're there to facilitate and not to participate. So I'm like, maybe my ideas will skew a little bit the ideas of the owner of the product. So I'm like,
yeah, and you know what? I almost never do it, but I did it in that scenario. And then I also did a naming sprint, which is a 1-day workshop to help a company rename themselves. And that was a similar situation. They were early stage and the team was small, and I contributed some ideas to the naming. And the reason I did it was just because there were so few people to contribute that I wanted them to think outside of themselves. I think when you do that, you need to really then step back into facilitator role, be unbiased. You know, you're not contributing to the voting and choice making, but you're just putting some additional ideas into the ring because you've got such a small set of participants.
All right. Thank you.
I'm quite, I'm feeling free to do it because I asked Jake, like, do you do it? And he does it. So basically, I will bring something, I will sketch something if I have an idea. If I'm like, okay, that could work, I'm doing it. You know what? I'm never chosen almost. Because, you know, I always try to push too far, you know, a bit to provoke to see if they're gonna go for it, if they're gonna be, you know, courageous enough. And most of the time they don't take my ideas, which is fine. But, you know, it kind of like, it's thought provoking. And I think you can do it, but you have to be very careful not to bias the group and don't do it if there are 4 participants, because you're going to take too much of space, of course. And don't pitch your ideas. But I know some facilitators who do it, and it does work. You just need to know exactly what's your place. And
yeah, that's good perspective stuff.
Yeah. That's great. So just to finish on the topic of hybrid, right? Do you see it as is it just fancy, and is it just something that people are trying now because they can, and sometimes they have to do it? Or do you see it going somewhere and maybe it's the future of what we are doing? How promising is it?
Well, my perspective on a hybrid is that because of everything we've gone through, people are used to being in hybrid settings where they have some people in a space, some people dialing in, some people on a big screen video, you know, just a mix of ways that people are coming together. And so because they're used to being accommodated in that way, they expect that a workshop should also accommodate hybrid participation. And so I think we need to accommodate it. But as it stands with the tools that are in place, the way that I accommodate it is by saying, if it's going to be hybrid, I'm going to design it as though it's remote, and everyone who's in the room has to use the remote tools. And I also do a lot of expectation setting in advance for any workshop where I say, okay, we're going to be in person. I'm designing the workshop for in-person collaboration. That means if somebody needs to convert to remote at the last minute, they can observe. They cannot participate. Because if I were going to design for hybrid, I would design it in remote and everybody would join that way. So I'm very communicative upfront, and I also included in my expectation setting emails that I send to all team members. I acknowledge life happens. People are used to having to make changes quickly. Yeah. But for this workshop, if there's a last minute change and you need to switch, you're either going to not join or you can join and observe, but you're not going to be able to participate with the format that we've defined. I think future state, there may be better tools and ways to accommodate collaboration cross remote and in person, and maybe they exist and I just have not learned how to use them well yet. I'm curious to hear from the rest of you. But yeah, that's where I'm at on the matter of hybrid.
Do you believe of, running workshops with these VR headsets and in the virtual space, in the metaverse? Like, do you see it working or not?
I think that's a nice idea. I think that the technology needs to go a long way to make that feel like something we can all access and do well together. I'm always open to change.
Yeah.
To try.
It's the thing, because myself, before COVID, I saw these ideas of running design sprints online, right? And it felt like, oh yeah, I understand why they would do that in the US. It's such a big country. It's never going to work in Europe, right? It doesn't make sense to run workshops online or sprints online. I was wrong. I mean, when COVID came, I was super happy to read your guide first and to try running workshops with these tools, because it does work. And sometimes, even if it doesn't sound very, it sounds counterintuitive, you just have to try. And yeah, you are just being surprised. So myself, I never run any metaverse workshop, but I would love to try. So if one of you clients would like a metaverse workshop, I'm super happy to organize it. And I'm sure you too, right, Jackie?
No, well, I would like to come and observe you doing
the crash test.
Maybe we can do it together.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I think that would be fun. Yeah, that would be cool. Okay, there are two more questions. Dave? Where's Dave?
Hi. Yeah, I'm just curious to find out what have been the biggest change to the activities that you ran, first of all, when we first had to go remote at the beginning of the pandemic, to what you're doing now. What have you learnt and changed on that journey?
Such a good question. I have to think about this one. Steph, you don't have an answer ready, do you?
I'm actually very sorry. I was reading the chat, so I didn't get the question.
So what has changed since we first started, since we first went to remote till now, in the way that we run activities or run design sprints?
For me, remote is not a big deal anymore. It's not something special. It became normal. It became the way I work, right? So it's not fancy or weird or special anymore. It was really a big deal before. And now I just take care of the team, the challenge. And even if last minute they're like, oh, let's switch remote, it's not a big deal for me. So I'm way cooler with that. And I think what changed is the attitude of people being online. Before they were like, oh, wait, I have a bad background. There are noises with my kids and my dogs in the background, and now they're just cool. They are okay to do it from home. I don't know. It's way more casual. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would agree to your first point, where it just feels easier. It feels easier for me as well as for the participants to collaborate in a remote setting. I do think that I have slowed down more. When I first started running my sprints online, I felt like, I don't know, maybe I was moving at a clip to get through the work that was not as sustainable. And now I just feel like I move at a more even pace. I'm okay with things taking longer if they need to. There's a lot of flexibility in the full sprint format for things to kind of shift as needed. Meaning like if you don't get everything done on day one that you wanted to get done and you do it on day two, it's okay. To just trust that we're going to get to a good spot as a team, which makes me feel more relaxed and easy.
Makes sense. Popular demand are asking Sabrina, do you want to share, because she wrote that she actually ran a workshop in the Metaverse and everyone wants to hear about it.
Yeah.
Sabrina.
Okay, in a nutshell, so we did. It was about a legal topic, and I used a design sprint. Let's say nearly a real design sprint for 2 days, full days, and our prototype was a pitch, and the test was a jury of lawyers of this in this field. So that was kind of the hackathon style, and we had several teams, also several facilitators, and we created kind of a guideline for the facilitators. We not really trained them, but we had really experienced facilitators, all of them design sprint facilitators as well. And we had, let's say, in the Metaverse, we did that in spatial. It was really, it was awesome, very engaging. It is less tiring because you don't stare at faces, at these small faces, but you have movements. It's also like a default movement. A little bit when you talk, the hands are moving. You can look at each other. We could make a session out of that.
It's cool.
It's really interesting. Yeah, it was a great experience. It was very engaging. People were like, wow, that's cool here, just very excited. So also very engaged. But we had also some troubles, technical troubles.
Of course.
Audio, a lot of high bandwidth. It was global. So I have to say I was surprised how well it worked. But then some of the teams, they switched to Zoom then, or Zoom or Google Meet. Then when they had, because we had different rooms for them, but then some of them, when you entered, they were there, but you couldn't see them. So then they had to reload, and that happened several times. Then they just switched to Zoom. But we had our beginning keynote, Inspire keynote, and also the jury, like our test, so to say. We had in this Metaverse big auditorium, and that was amazing. Great
Cool.
experience.
How did you use stickies, or how does it work?
We used Mural, so you could just share your screen. Everyone had Mural board, so every team had a Mural board. We had a group Mural board where everything was linked, and then they worked on their Mural board. They had, let's say, a little bit simplified. We tried to simplify it as much as possible so that it was not too complicated for them, because a lot of them were new lawyers, a lot of lawyers. So that worked quite well.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sabrina.
Yeah, thanks, Sabrina.
All right, that's great. This is almost the end, Jackie. And I'm bringing back this board of chocolate that symbolizes not the gift you're going to receive. You're going to receive a nice fancy box of Swiss chocolate for real. But you need to choose out of our great crowd today. They asked a lot of questions, right? You need to choose the one person who is going to get the same gift than you, that we're going to send from Switzerland.
I mean, it's hard because Sabrina just came in with a lot of very valuable knowledge at the end. But I do think I'm going to go with Gabriel because he was so engaged right out of the gate, asked several great questions.
Woohoo!
Thank you very much.
Great. So Gabriel, we're gonna take you contact, and so we're gonna be able to send you the chocolate. Please, everyone, I would like you to make a huge round of applause for Jackie Colburn, who is our guest today. Amazing.
Thanks for having me.
And see you very, very soon for the next Itoday Apero. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
You can dance. Bye everyone.